In the past, I've explored the importance of wisdom and how it relates to wit, intelligence, intellect, thinking fast, and so on. In this video, I will talk about the difference between the basketball player's mind and the martial artist. I will also explore why women are wrong and bred to be orc-like, if you will. To not see the good in me and to not submit, right? To not be ultra receptive. Remember, we live in a society where women are ultra receptive to rich people, to celebrities, okay, to guys with nice things and nice cars. It is insane to think that even for a moment I could possibly be wrong. That is how clear-cut this is. If you do not believe me especially, you need to pay more attention and think more carefully than those that do. Think fast and focused. Athletes tend to not think as fast and focused. Look at how they talk, not just after a game when they're tired and breathing heavily, but when they're in commercials. These guys are not martial arts material. They are train this guy with this athletic body material. There's a difference between a martial arts body and a basketball or football or bodybuilder's body. So their form of thinking suggests training, repetition, reflexes, and thinking less fast. Think about the difference between running and striking at world record speed with a surgical precision. Think about the difference between dribbling versus striking. The thinner one's body is when you dribble around the back, the easier it is to steal the ball because the ball has less time behind the back, depending on how you dribble it, but generally speaking. Okay. Generally speaking, if you run and make a few dribbles, you can outmaneuver somebody. Whereas in martial arts, especially one-on-one, it is those quick, small steps that allow for the master martial artist to outmaneuver his slower opponent, his less quick on their feet opponent. Most people extremely downplay the importance of skywalking, of footwork, okay, in martial arts. You see bouncing, you see MMA versions in karate and taekwondo. The Egyptians knew that the master martial artist was fast on his feet. And there's a difference between this kind of precision and effective, applicable to martial arts, coordinated footwork and tap dancing, but perhaps it is the closest thing to it. The basketball player is thicker, right? Jordan is thicker than I am. Not by much, but noticeably so. LeBron, obviously so. Then there's the smaller one. What allows the smaller guy to outmaneuver a basketball player isn't the same thing as what allows the 6'4" guy to outmaneuver the smaller guy. Isaiah Thomas wouldn't last 5 seconds in ancient combat with me before the deadly blow was delivered. Neither would Iverson. But in basketball, they probably could outmaneuver me, but not with ease. This is key. Take a moment and visualize why that is. Imagine the footwork of someone like me with more of a toned Egyptian kind of leg. Okay, look at the Narmer palette. Look at the tall Egyptians portrayed in some of their images in hieroglyphics and so on. Imagine a quick feet move. Boom. To the side, boom, to the side. Dodge. Dodge, right. Okay, this kind of footwork versus who's going to win? Think about it. Okay, now think about the momentum that it's building and the motion of the strike and the more angles that are presented. Okay, the more effective your footwork is, the more precise quick and effective the martial arts strike and its angle is. I don't think anybody should question why that is, nor should they question the motor movements in the cortices and the other parts of the brain. How this has everything to do with the hippocampus, spatial awareness, the amygdala, emotions, balancing them, right? Dealing with them, decision making, which includes dealing with emotions. And this is part of why I am superior to other people. They're letting their emotions lead them down an immoral path, while I walk the highest path as Pharaoh. The striatum, learning inhibition and reward processing. The thalamus, processing and relaying sensory information to other parts of the brain. Gray matter for focus, task. White matter is the networking grid that connects gray matter and other processing centers. And there's other parts of the brain as well, like the cerebellum involved. Now let's get back to this idea. Okay, brain power, mental prowess, focus, and concentration. The figure, the exact body type, and maneuvering. We are not all the same. Just because someone has my height, and even if they have my weight, doesn't mean we have the same body type. My arms might be longer. Their belly might be bigger. Even if they have the same degree of body fat, the same amount of body fat, it's not necessarily distributed the same way. Our bones aren't necessarily as dense as each other's. It's not necessarily the same density. And so on and so forth, right? We don't have the same hands, the same feet, right, for balancing, right? You know, what steps are taken, if you will. Holding the black man down by insisting on grappling and brute force versus skywalking to spiritually take off. And this leads us to wisdom. Maneuvering absolutely is wisdom, whether we're talking about political maneuvering, martial arts, and so on. Okay, there's a degree of wisdom. Granted, politicians are pretty much all filth, but there's corporate maneuvering, social maneuvering, economic, political, okay, and so on. This has everything to do with what women are maneuvering toward which men and why. If we don't see attractive women maneuvering towards someone like me, by default, women have failed. Think about this. Even if I was a bad person, who makes these arguments in this manner? Regardless what kind of a force I am a force to be reckoned with, and society failed to reckon with me in martial arts. Whether you are a lukewarm woman, a good woman, or a bad woman, you're going to respect it. And if there are women in society that are the type of force that I am, not to this degree, mind you, they are going to maneuver toward me because whatever kind of force I am the pinnacle of that force. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence that it is righteousness. When you see that overwhelming evidence and you're a woman looking for the best man possible, who's willing to face adversity, the only kind of woman you should respect, really. This evidence is going to cause you to be ultra receptive, and no military career is going to get in the way. No intelligence agency or law enforcement career is going to get in the way. Nobody is going to be able to tell you otherwise, especially not using the scale of an inferior system, especially a crony capitalist, oppressive, cultural, imperialist, neo-colonialist system. So let's look at the word wisdom. I've gone over this before, but I can't go over it enough. It's been a while. It comes from the roots, wizza, meaning manner, the wise a manner, if you will. Eidos, E-I-D-O-S, meaning form. If people aren't even talking about martial arts form in the manner I do, why listen to them? What is the form of a righteous hero facing evil versus an American form of conformity? If the martial arts has American attached to it, right, we are talking about the illusion of being a hero. We are talking about, quote unquote, spreading democracy And yes, you can imagine by making these arguments, especially as uncontrolled opposition, I have validated myself to a certain degree with just that statement alone. Idein, meaning to see. Idein, to see. Right? Your perception, your perspective. I'm talking the Falcon perspective, and nobody can present a viable argument to the contrary. No one say, hey, that's not how a Falcon would see it. They know damn well I am separating myself from this, looking down. I see the hero, I see the females, I see the assistant, and so on. This is bird's eye view, the falcon's eye. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal in the animal kingdom. Imagine how focused, what kind of sight we're talking about when we're talking about a falcon diving at 200 miles an hour, or we're talking about a martial artist with world record speed with long arms, which are harder to balance and move quickly. Now, let's move on, shall we? Mage and scientists have revelation. They're trying to figure out some X, Y, Z, squared, cubed, okay, square root that, cube root that, okay, let me see, what's the formula, they're on the board, right? It hits them, boom, it hits them. Do they tap into it anytime they please to have that state? No, because they are unfocused and they have a female brain. However, so to speak, and now people will argue about what the female brain is, but no matter what view you have on it, you know what the fuck I mean, okay? However, there is something to be said about that, and the martial artist can tap into it. When he is engaged in combat or in sparring, he's tapped into it. Only when the scientist interferes, or someone pushing drugs or something, or some saboteur interferes, does he have trouble coming into that zone. Sparring, mentally, with speeches. What I'm doing now is crushing the opposition. In a reduced state, mind you. I'm crushing them. They don't have the courage to even tell the truth, much less do it with this sort of martial arts precision. Granted, I make a few grammatical errors because this is the difference between speech and natural combat movement from the supernatural realm, if you will. Speech versus 300,000 years of human evolution, which at some point, tens of thousands of years ago, became martial arts evolution as the human being perfected himself to truly become a modern human in the scientific and natural sense, and not in the pseudo-scientific, modern day propaganda sense. Talking about iPhones and so on and so forth. So anyway, the scientists' ideas come to them not so that they can lead, much less lead martial artists, much less lead the top martial artists, but so they can assist the natural leader. The female brain is not the natural leader. That's why we have this gender-neutral society. That's why the cross is a sword that has had its important part removed. The sword is a phallic symbol. Do the math. The cross is an incomplete sword. Why? Because the top part isn't long enough. And I'm not talking about dick size. I'm talking about the spirit of masculinity. Witten means sage. Wizzo means sage. This is part of the root for wise, and by default, the root for wisdom. When the martial artist says the martial artist is closest to God, by default, whether you have a complex or whether you have an open mind, or whether you already get it, you should start thinking, hey, we can't think about the caged brute. We must think about the Shaolin monk, the African martial art pharaoh, the Angolan capoeira martial art master, the Igbo king, etc. Go to the source. It is the intangible heritage. From where? From America? No. It came from somewhere else. The source is God, and then it's Africa, then it moves over to, then some of it moves to Asia, and so on and so forth. War is key when it comes to the duties of the king who leads the armies. Which general to choose, when to quit, when to fight, etc. The king must be a martial arts mind a martial artist or he's an imposter.